Thank you everybody again for joining. My name is Ilan Sibilia. If you haven't met me by now, I am the Sales and Marketing Director here at SoCast. I joined back in 2016, and so I've been with the team for quite some time and slogging at the radio game, trying to push the boulder uphill and make sure digital becomes as important and meaningful as it can be for our broadcasters, ensuring that they can reach out and connect with their listeners in every meaningful channel where those listeners are actually. The agenda today, quickly to look at what we'll be discussing first and foremost is positioning the brand. Then we'll look at what's working for other broadcasters who are doing really well, looking monetizing the digital experience and how all of the various efforts that your teams are putting forth can drive results and make sure that digital becomes a revenue center instead of a cost center for you. And lastly, just talking about engagement and how to drive that. So first and foremost, when it comes to positioning our brand, we as people in the radio industry understand that on a daily basis, audio and ear share is getting fragmented. There are new channels that are being created every day, and understanding what those channels are and how to connect to them go a long way into having meaningful engagement with your listeners and making sure that you connect with them more frequently. Making sure that you're tying digital and radio together, specifically on social, drives huge lifts. We see that broadcasters who are successfully engaging their listeners across multiple different social channels will see a larger increase overall in listenership from those individuals versus just pushing on radio itself. As far as making sure that your brand is accessible, we know that almost 50% of all terrestrial radio apps are used outside of the range of the signal. If you have listeners that are driving in their car, connecting through Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, and they're looking for your signal, if they are unable to connect through a stream, you're losing out on almost half of the listenership from mobile apps and digital streams like that. So it's incredibly important to make sure that you are in the car, on the phone, with smart speakers. We realize now that in the last year, almost between 17 and 18% of all radio listening now comes through smart speakers. People have these devices in their homes, in their businesses, and they're frequently using them and getting rid of old school radios. So if you are not positioning yourself in the arena to be able to allow your listeners to connect to you through these tools and channels, you're really missing out. Understanding that the mobile phone, the phone is where the majority of all radio engagement happens digitally. Almost 70% of all radio station websites are actually engaged through mobile devices from what we've seen on our stats. And making sure that you have an engaging mobile experience is incredibly important because, again, if you don't have that tool, they're going to listen somewhere else. Podcasting, one of the really, really important things that we learned in 2025 is that there is a huge shift moving over to content that is on demand. Listeners want to be able to listen when they want to. And so being able to record your content, whether it's actually creating individual podcasts or even just recording the shows that your team works so hard to create, extending the life of that content is incredibly important to make sure that your listeners can connect to it when they want to. We saw this year that podcast listenership went up over 6%. I think it was about 6.3. And this year, over 550 million people are actively registered for podcasts and signed up and subscribed to them. So this is a very meaningful place where a lot of broadcasters are starting to realize that they don't really have to do a ton of extra work, but extending the value of the content they're already creating is really a meaningful experience for the listeners. Now, as far as what's working, looking to 2026 for your strategies, as far as a lot of broadcasters that we've been talking to are starting to try and figure out how do we engage more meaningfully with our listeners, who's doing digital right, and what are the things that they are doing that is driving the additional engagement that they can convert into revenue. And one of the main things that we're seeing a lot of broadcasters starting to do is having conversations with listeners, as opposed to just having, a one-way chat where the radio is talking to whoever's listening. Now with digital, we have the tools to allow listeners, whether it's through a website, whether it's through a mobile app, to actually have live conversations with their favorite talent at different stations, whether it's by sending them messages back and forth, whether it's submitting photos or videos or voice recordings. Your users want to connect with you. Your listeners are interested in having conversations with the brands that they care about and that they follow most. And by providing your team these tools, you can start really creating much more meaningful experiences for your P1s and really have them become advocates for your brand in a much more meaningful way. Another thing that we're seeing is working very well for broadcasters that are getting into the mobile app space is leveraging push notifications properly. When I say properly, what I mean is, not just having a catch-all for all the different push notifications that you're sending out, but really allowing your listeners to customize what type of notifications they care about, so that whenever you create content or you're pushing out a post or a notification, you know that it's only going to the people that care about that specific content type. And by doing this, we've seen across the board that not only does that drive double-digit percentage increases for push notification opens, but it also reduces the amount of people unsubscribing by double-digit percentage points, which is backed up by the analytics that we've seen across our platform. So being able to, again, allow your listeners to tell you what they care about is incredibly meaningful when it comes to, again, shifting to a more of an on-demand and targeted content strategy. Consistent contesting. I cannot talk about this enough. There are so many broadcasters who I speak to day in and day out who understand the importance of contesting, but whether the tool that they're using is complicated, or we don't have enough people to run them, or there's not enough time. Contesting is not nearly as consistent across radio as it should be. Typically, what we've seen with our broadcasters who manage these really well and run contests consistently, typically about 30% of all the website traffic that comes to these pages are people going to register for contests. And so if you don't have a tool that allows you to run contests easily and meaningfully, capture data about the people that are signing up for them, and leverage that to be able to position it to your sales team, you're really missing the boat. There's a ton of revenue and a ton of engagement that comes through managing contests well. And if this is something that your team is struggling with, I would really say that prioritizing this in 2026 will likely be one of the largest drivers of increases in traffic that radio will see. Now, understanding how you're doing obviously, comes down to data. Comes down to looking at how in each channel are we engaging with our listeners, and are we being successful there? A lot of success comes from testing and measuring. People, especially a lot of our radio broadcast partners, have thrown a lot of stuff at a wall. Don't want to pardon my French, but the more stuff you throw at a wall, we can kind of see what sticks. But unless you have a specific tool that is allowing you to identify every channel that you are testing in, you'll never know what's working. And a lot of my broadcast partners come to me and say, Ilan, you know what? We can't do everything. We try to do 50 things at once. We don't know what's good. We don't know what's bad. And we end up doing nothing because we didn't know where the success came from. Having analytics tools and being able to look at these at the very minimum on a weekly basis to understand where success is coming from is a major factor in creating success for your stations. If you are not looking at these metrics, you will never know if something's going viral. You'll never know what's really resonating with your listeners, or conversely, if the content that you're publishing is not really effective. And so making sure that you have, at the very least, a tool that you can use to consolidate your data, to understand across your digital channels where success comes from, it's incredibly meaningful and really, I would almost say, necessary in today's day and age to make sure that you are being successful on the digital side. Now, monetizing the experience, this is something that all of our partners ask us about. When it comes to digital, everybody wants it to be a revenue center. We don't want to be paying more for our websites and apps and different tools than it's making us. And really understanding that 90% of all businesses in North America today are investing in digital above and beyond their traditional advertising means, really makes it important to have as many options as possible for your advertisers. Making sure that the websites and the apps are sponsorable, for example. And there are so many tools on these different digital properties that broadcasters use that they can sponsor. Now, typically, you're not going to want to do all of them because it's just a bad visual experience. But you can sponsor sliders, you can sponsor listen live buttons, weather widgets, polls, contests, event calendars, classified sections. All of these different parts of your website are meaningful to somebody. And based on analytics, you can identify which demos are connecting with each specific part of your digital ecosystem. Take that information, go to your advertisers, and have them sponsor those specific elements. Pretty much all websites have ad units. If your team is not out there selling at least one or two of these every month, we got a big problem. A lot of broadcasters, and again, a lot of our smaller partners who came to us said, we never really got into digital in a meaningful way, when we should have, 8, 9, 10 years ago. We just started giving it away along with radio. We don't know how to add value to this now. Understanding that every place on your website or on your mobile app is driving engagement, this is not something that your teams should just be giving away. And again, by leveraging analytics, you can go to your advertising partners and prove to them, hey guys, I've got 10, 20, 50,000 eyeballs on my website every month, and half of them are going to my classified section. There's a really meaningful place here for you. You should be advertising here because the demographics that are coming to my classified section are identical to the ones that are listening on the station. So you should give me an extra $300, $400, or $500 a month. Let's sponsor this, and let me show you how I can drive you additional business. Mobile apps have a ton of sponsorable areas. You can sponsor splash screens, audio pre-roll, video pre-roll, images, banner ads, everything that you can do on a website. And again, these are not things that you want to give away. These are additional value add that you can build into packages when your team is selling, because the people that are listening to you on the app are probably different than the people on the website. There are different demographics. You can package them together, obviously, but there are meaningful places for every one of your advertisers. And by leveraging the insights that you have on your demographics and where people are connecting through, you can go to your advertisers and create really meaningful connections for them across your digital ecosystem. The last thing that I wanted to talk about really quickly today is making sure that, looking forward to 2026, that we are really engaging our listeners in as many places as we can. Again, with radio's ear share being so fragmented, people are connecting to 10, 15, 20 digital platforms on a daily basis. And so in making sure that you can push out and touch them in all these different places will allow you to drive them back to your websites, back to your mobile apps, get them to consume additional content, register for another contest, maybe have a quick conversation with one of the DJs. And just the more ways that we can bring listeners back to your digital properties, the more success that you guys will find, not only on the engagement side, but on the revenue side as well. One of the things that a lot of broadcasters have told me this year was that, they have challenges managing their social media profiles, especially broadcasters that have 6, 8, 10 stations in a market potentially. Logging into, 8 different social profiles to publish the same post is really a waste of time. And having a single tool where you can monitor up to 150 different social profiles, publish to multiple profiles, manage all of your inbound text messages and user and member conversations. A tool like this is something that not only helps your team save a ton of time, but engage with listeners more meaningfully. If we can give your talent back an hour a day to go and have meaningful connections and conversations with listeners, to publish an additional post or two, to get people to come back to the website or connect to the stream, that's the name of the game. If we can automate the efforts that your team puts out and let them do 1 or 2 extra things a day, that drives meaningful engagement and will increase your metrics. Classified category sponsorships. This is something that we have seen has grown tremendously in the last few years, ever since SoCast updated our local listings tool. This is something that pretty much every partner of ours who has registered for the classifieds or the obituaries tools have essentially effectively converted digital from a cost center to a revenue center. This is where a ton of engagement goes through to websites. So if you don't have an area on your page where users can submit items for a classified section, where local funeral homes can submit obituaries so that your team doesn't have to put them in, or a local event calendar where users can actually create events that are happening in the local community, tools like these are driving a tremendous amount of engagement because A, it's all user-generated content, and B, your teams are not having to put out effort, but by still sharing these pages, they drive additional traffic into them, additional viewership, and then obviously that converts into revenue and monetization by being able to sponsor things like individual categories. This is working extremely well. If your team has not considered adding user-generated content to your digital strategy in 2026, you're likely missing out, because this is free content that comes from your users. And so without any additional effort, you can create multiple new pages that are meaningful on your websites and on your mobile apps that users will want to engage with. A mobile app. If your team has not yet bought into an app, or if you guys are still looking, or you're using, something very simple like a SecureNet, for example. Mobile apps, like we said, are just growing in popularity. Year over year, more and more listenership comes through mobile. If you do not have an app that you can engage your listeners with meaningfully, that is absolutely something you should consider for 2026. Like we saw earlier in the presentation, almost half of non-traditional listening outside of the terrestrial area comes from apps and comes from streams. This is one of your most meaningful tools to connect with your listeners and have them engage with your radio station and your stream. It connects seamlessly with your website, so there's no additional effort for your teams. Being able to monetize it, there are unique revenue toolkits on the mobile apps, which can be sold separately from the website. Opening up additional inventory options for your sales team is incredibly important, because there's something for everyone. And the more you give them to allow your salespeople to present custom and unique packages, the better your success rates will be in selling to your advertisers. And having an app that really is not just a stream, but allows users to submit messages, consume your podcasts, register for contests. This is how you expand your brand and make sure that no matter where your listeners are, they can engage with you externally.